Parshas Behaaloscha, Tovshin Ches. This week's parsha really covers a lot of different subjects. And over the years, Baruch Hashem, we've gone through many of them. But this year we're going to touch on a subject that really we haven't spoken about in a couple of years, in quite a number of years. And one of the subjects covered in this week's parsha is that of the Misoinim. And the Misoinim refer to the people in the Midbar that complained. And the Pasuk tells us about these complainers, about the people who complained, that Hashem was really not too pleased with this conduct. The people complained, and to put it mildly, Hashem was not very happy with this. And the Pasuk tells us, Vayehi ha'am kimisoinim, Ra ba'oznei Hashem. And we call these people misoinim, and they were Ra, word bad, in the ba'oznei Hashem. Vayishma Hashem vayichar apoy. Hashem was very unhappy. Kaviyachol, vativar bam eish Hashem. And then there was a punishment, and we'll speak about that a little bit after. And Rashi tells us that when the Pasuk tells us, Vayehi ha'am, what is ha'am, the nation, referring to? That connotes, that is Rishoyim. When we say ha'am, we are saying that these people who were complaining, they were Rishoyim. And the word misoinim, says Rashi, tells us alila, that they were looking to cause trouble. They were looking to create a way of going further away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Ramban tells us that a very interesting way of looking at how they were unhappy with the situation in the Midbar at that point. The Ramban tells us that Har Sinai was considered, when they got the Torah, Har Sinai was considered like being in town. It was still close, they felt, to civilization. However, once they moved away from Har Sinai, they weren't comfortable anymore. Now they were going into the Midbar. They weren't at Har Sinai. They weren't close to civilization anymore. They were going into a wilderness. So you know what? They started to complain. And what were the complaints? The complaints were, what are we going to do? How are we going to live in the wilderness? How are we going to live in the Midbar? What are we going to eat while we're in the Midbar? What are we going to drink? And how are we going to survive the traveling in the Midbar and come out alive? And it was really one complaint after the other. And the Pasuk tells us about this, that Hashem felt kaviyachol, that this was Ra. And when we say the word Ra, we mean this is bad. This is not good. And the Pasuk specifically uses a lashon of Ra over here. And why? Because they should have followed Hashem. How? B'simcha u'v'tuv levav. Hashem, who had taken them out of Mitzrayim and given them so much, they should have followed HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'simcha u'v'tuv levav. They should have appreciated all the good that they did have. Why are we now focusing on what we may not have? Hashem had given them so much good, they should have been focusing on that. And the sin, the Aveira, at that point was that they lacked simcha and bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They should have just, at this point, they saw how much Hashem did for them, they should have just believed in Hashem and gone about whatever Hashem wanted, b'simcha, happily. So there are a lot of explanations in the Mefarshim really about this episode of what happened in the Midbar. And the Mefarshim give many different reasons and explanations about what they were complaining about, how they complained, whether they should have complained or not complained. The Mefarshim speak a lot about it. But the Nesivos Shalom asks, he asked though, what was really the great Aveira over here? Like, it's very seldom we see in the Torah that the Torah tells us straight out that these people are called misoinim. They were looking to distance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're called Ra, they're called bad. And Nesivos Shalom wants to know, what really is the essence, what is the great sin over here? And if it was a great sin, what was the great punishment that Hashem wanted to give them, the punishment that ensued right after that? And later in the parsha too, we see sort of the same type of concept. We see later in the parsha that the people, Klal Yisrael, they wanted to eat basar, they wanted to eat meat. And the Torah tells us how Hashem was so upset about that. And that what was so bad about the fact that they wanted to have meat? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu get angry to the point that they were punished? The pasuk tells us, a makkah rabba me'oid. It was a makkah, a great makkah, me'oid. It was a very, very great makkah that they were punished with. So there must have been something so fundamental that was really breached over here. First of all, for what they did, and second of all, that there was such a great punishment for what? For the actions that they took. There must have been something very fundamental where Klal Yisrael at this point had stepped over the line. So Nesivos Shalom says that we need to know that the Taryag mitzvahs in the Torah, all of them, all 613 mitzvahs, like we've said many times, there are 613 different pathways to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, and the pasuk says, uladov kaboi, to cleave to become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And all 613 mitzvahs are 613 different ways to bring ourselves closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Nesivos Shalom tells us that there are certain things that actually cause an obstruction. They impede the connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All 613 mitzvahs are different pathways to connect, and there are certain fundamental things that actually are an obstruction to this. And the sins that they committed in the Midbar may have seemed minor, right, to us, but what's the big deal, right? They wanted to eat a little meat instead of this. They remembered the fish. They remembered different things that they ate. They said in Mitzrayim. It may have seemed very minor, but to us it would seem minor because we look at what, okay, you want to eat this, eat that, right? But really what it showed was, it showed a lack of bitachon. And bitachon is one of the fundamentals. Bitachon is a fundamental that every person that exists, that every Yid has to have. And not having bitachon goes against the connection. The connection that we are looking, that we are striving for to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when one doesn't have bitachon and believe in Hashem, that is a fundamental sin. That impedes the entire L'Dov Kaboy, wanting to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a person needs to know that at all costs we need to try to keep that connection. And this is how we look at the events of our parsha, says the Nesivos Shalom. In other words, the chatoim and the sins of the Dor HaMidbar, they're not gauged by the way things that we would perceive as small or large averas against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is not the way that the sins of the Dor HaMidbar are gauged. So, we would think they just complained about what they would eat and what they would drink. So we would think, like we said, it's not such a big deal. But it's about the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what we always have to keep in mind. That when a person is not besimcha with the lot, with what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them, that is a big problem. You're not just transgressing something. In other words, that distances the connection between the person and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands that people are human, and people are not perfect. And people do things, and people are not expected to be perfect. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu also expects that I'll take care of you, Hashem says. You have bitachon in me, and the more bitachon you have in me, the more I'm going to take care of you. But when you complain about what Hashem is giving you now, that is big in the eyes of Hashem. And this really is a lesson that every one of us needs to take out of the parsha, where we need to focus and appreciate what we do have. It's just a way of life that some people are always focused on, what am I missing now? What does my neighbor have that I don't have? What does this friend have? that I don't have. I have this for so long, I need something new, I need something better, I need a new model, I need more things. But what about turning around and looking at all the amazing and great things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you up to this point? Where is your focus? Are you focusing on what you think you lack? Or are you focusing on, look around for a minute and see how much good we have gotten over the days and months and years. Hashem gives us so much good. And just look at people that are actually suffering from things that you don't suffer from. Be appreciative. Have hakaras hatov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'simcha because of all the good things that He does for you. And we need to understand that every word of the parsha and every part of every parsha, like we always say, it's not a history book. We have to look at how does this apply to us. And when we look at the people in the Midbar and what they complained, Hashem took them out of Mitzrayim. He gave them everything. They had money. They were never going to go hungry. They were never going to be thirsty. They had so much, yet they chose to focus at this point on the little bit that they thought, we need a little more. We need something different. We need something that we perceive, that we think would be good for us. And that shows a lack of bitachon. And of course, what follows, it shows that you are not serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'simcha. Hashem wants you to be happy. And happy with Him, happy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, He wants you to be happy in general in life. A person should not walk around with their face down. He shouldn't want depressed. Be b'simcha. And the way a person is b'simcha is you actually appreciate and you see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you. And we need to train ourselves to conduct ourselves in that way and learn the lessons from this week's parsha, so with that we become different people, and we do have bitachon, and we do serve Hashem b'simcha, and we do say how happy we are with everything that Hashem has given us up till now.